Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Alberta government announced an increase in funding to allow for more seniors to be able to live at home. A date for a bail hearing has been set for the Lethbridge mother accused in the assault case of her baby daughter. We have the details. And animated characters have come to life in the form of snow sculptures. See the incredible work of Alberta artist Jacques St. Laurent.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Health Minister Jason Copping says Albertans can expect more funding to go into our continuing care sector. Copping says there will be an increase of 15% or $570 million to beef up the delivery of programs to the tune of $4.3 billion. Copping says the increase in funding will help implement the ideas presented by community groups to make sure the system meets the evolving needs of Albertans.
Alberta Health has also been working with our continuing care partners and health service providers to implement more recommendations from the two reports by adding more continuing care capacity, supporting seniors to stay in their homes longer with additional supports, particularly in rural areas, addressing staffing challenges, and improving the care that Albertans deserve.
A date for a bail hearing has been set for the Lethbridge mother accused in the sexual assault case of her infant daughter. The woman, who cannot be named under a publication ban, will have her bail hearing on March 14th at the Lethbridge Provincial Court. She did not make an appearance in court Friday morning as it was waived by her defense counsel. It's alleged that a baby girl was assaulted multiple times while in the care of her parents. The mother has been charged with failing to provide the necessaries of life. She'll remain in custody at the Lethbridge Correctional Centre until her hearing. The folks with Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services are continuing to investigate a couple of commercial building fires. Officials say demolition of the Beau-en-Tong building is now complete, and demolition of the Lethbridge Hotel will resume in the next few days. Officials say the investigations will take a lot of time and effort, and safety protocols will be required. Contaminated material, including asbestos, had to be safely removed from the area when the buildings came down. The Lethbridge Hotel fire came a month after another historic building, the Beau-en-Tong, was leveled by a blaze. Investigators have deemed the Lethbridge Hotel fire as suspicious. Lethbridge police are warning about a used phone scam. It involves phones that are being sold online that are blacklisted by cell phone providers and cannot be activated. Constable Joel Chenard with the LPS explains.
A member of Lethbridge had purchased a phone online. It was they assumed it to be a brand new phone. They tested it out on scene, and then a short period of time later, after buying the phone, it no longer connected to a cellular network. Upon them calling their cell phone carrier, they had learned the phone had been blacklisted by the carrier. Through our investigation, we determined that there is a possibility of somebody being able to obtain a phone lawfully through a cell phone carrier for whatever circumstances they might be in, whether it be financial or for fraudulent reasons. The phone might no longer be paid for properly, and the cell phone carrier decides to turn off services for that phone and blacklist it. Essentially leaves the new buyer of the phone with a phone that's completely unusable and essentially a paperweight.
Constable Chenard says if you know someone who's fallen victim to this used phone scam, to contact Lethbridge Police right away at 403-328-4444. A Calgary pastor has been charged with a hate crime following an incident at Seton Library in the city's southeast last month. Police say protesters gathered to express their opposition to a drag queen storytime event where a Calgary drag queen was to read stories to kids. When police arrived, they say things got a little out of hand and heated between the organizers of the event and the protesters, with some being escorted off the property. 36-year-old pastor Derek Scott Reimer from Mission 7 Ministries was one of them. He's being charged with causing a disturbance and one count of mischief. Pastor Reimer, when questioned by reporters, said, quote, "This is called what happens when we go against the drag."
What's disgusting?
Union busting!
The Alberta Union of Provincial Employees held a rally earlier today in Lethbridge at the Chancery Court building. Members were protesting cuts and layoffs impacting Good Samaritan Society workers. Darren Graham, the Vice President of AUPE for the South Region, explained what is currently happening in negotiations with the Good Samaritan Society.
We've put forward monetary proposals. They haven't put anything on the table, so we haven't even been able to bargain. But we're looking for what other long-term care agreements have been receiving, right? 6 years without a pay raise with this inflationary times for people that are very close to the poverty line to start with. Like I said, there's some salaries in this collective agreement that are below minimum wage, and that's just not right, especially in these times when we're seeing the increased inflation. Being called the Good Samaritan Society, they're not being very good Samaritans to their own workers.
Officials from the Good Samaritan Society declined an interview with Bridge City News, but they sent us a statement. It read, "We have had no layoffs in Lethbridge and there are no such plans. Alberta Health Services has reduced funding for 77 beds at the Good Samaritan Southgate Centre in Edmonton. As a result, we will be reducing staffing in clinical and non-clinical roles to align with the new funding at that site. There are no planned reductions at other GSS sites. We're in active bargaining with the union." Today was the kickoff and lead up to Green Shirt Day. Now, the event takes place annually on April the 7th, raising awareness of organ donation and to register organ donors across Canada. Green Shirt Day is championed by the parents of Logan Boulay, a young hockey player on the Humboldt Broncos who became an organ donor following a terrible bus crash that claimed his and 15 others' lives. The father of Logan Boulay, Toby Boulay, joins us now from Lethbridge to talk more about this upcoming event. Toby, how important is Green Shirt Day to you and your family?
Green Shirt Day, it gives an opportunity for people that don't really know much about organ donation and registering for it, a chance to become involved and spread the word, be inspired, talk to friends, and maybe hopefully register themselves to be a registered organ donor. I mean, really, only 1% of people actually become organ donors. Most deaths don't occur in a situation where an organ transplant will work.
So, Toby, how are you and your family healing since that tragic accident which claimed your son's life and the lives of 15 others on April 6th of 2018?
Every day you have a reminder, and it's like when I go grocery shopping, I go into Safeway or wherever, and there's certain things I can buy and certain things I want to buy and certain things I just don't. I just walk by it because I know Logan drank chocolate milk, and we haven't drank any chocolate milk at our house since 5 years now. So as a family, I'd say we're doing okay. There's 16 families that had tragedies that day. And so of the 16 families, we're probably doing, I think, better than some. But every day something happens, everything brings you up. And one of the neat, I guess, I don't know if we're neat, how's that? Is we're just randomly walking around somewhere doing something and someone will walk up and say, "Hey, are you Toby Boulay? Are you Bernie Boulay?" I go, "Yes. I just want you to know that I registered to be an organ donor because of your son." And that's always a special time, and it brings back it lets you know that someone's remembering your son, and that's kind of cool.
Thanks so much for your time today, Toby. By the way, a family skate will be taking place at the Logan Boulay Arena in Lethbridge, April 7th for Green Shirt Day from 1 till 3 p.m. It's a free skate for the entire family. A proposed wind turbine project in the area of Cardston County near the village of Hillspring is causing a lot of outrage among people who live in the area. Locals are concerned the project will have a great impact on wildlife and businesses. BCN's Angela Stewart caught up with some of the residents during a town hall meeting Thursday who expressed their frustration with the potential project.
It's being touted as a project that will provide social and economic benefits to the local community, but residents in Cardston County believe the Riplinger Wind Power Project will do more harm than good. A town hall meeting Thursday in the village of Hillspring saw well over a dozen residents expressing their concerns about the project, saying it will have a great impact on the community.
The vast majority of residents of this area seem to be against this, and it's only a few landowners who have signed on. There may be places for windmills, this is not it.
Covering about 14,000 acres of land just southeast of Pincher Creek, up to 50 turbines are expected to be put in, generating about 300 megawatts of power. TransAlta, the company behind the project, say early environmental studies were conducted in the area. But despite this, Angela Tabak and many others believe it will affect the habitat.
We observe all the time the migratory birds coming through here, pelicans, eagles, bats. So we're really, really concerned about the effect that it's going to have on the environment, including other wildlife. We have a lot of wildlife coming through this corridor out of Waterton.
And Kristen Primrose, who owns a cut flower farm, says she doesn't want to see the landscape disrupted, as this will hurt her business.
I bring in close to 1,000 people per month during tourist season. So if I can't offer that, that greatly impacts the tourist season within our local area. Brides aren't going to want to get married with, massive turbines blocking all the pretty mountains and all the landscape and all that.
Bridge City News did reach out to TransAlta for a comment, but did not receive one in time for broadcast. With many questions still lingering, the locals say they hope to have consultations with TransAlta, hoping to come to some sort of agreement. An approval from the Alberta Utilities Commission must be given before TransAlta can proceed with the proposed project. If approved, the electricity company expects construction to begin in 2023 and will be fully operational by 2025. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Dr. Leroy Littlebear is the Vice Provost of Inniskim Indigenous Relations at the University of Lethbridge. He says he's pretty optimistic for his people who are part of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Littlebear says he hopes that the next generation of Blackfoot people receive a better education and become contributing members of society.
My hope for their future is to come to institutions of higher learning, whether it be University of Lethbridge or elsewhere, but to make it comfortable for them, make it kind of like luxury for them to come to an institution, have the luxury to go to play around with ideas, concepts, and so on, so that, hey, when they leave the institution as graduates, hey, they'll become good contributing citizens. They'll become good, contributing members of their communities.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Dr. Leroy Littlebear from the U of L and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our program. Members of the Lethbridge Judo Club are competing at the Canada Winter Games going on right now in Prince Edward Island. The games feature 3,600 athletes, managers, and coaches from 20 different sports. Organizers say it's the largest multi-sport event in Canada. Now, the coach of the Lethbridge Judo Club, Russ Gallant, so far it's been an incredible experience for many of the young athletes.
Alberta is represented by 14 athletes, 7 girls and 7 boys, 9 of which are right from Lethbridge. We finished the individual competitions thus far, and all 9 athletes have medaled. But the whole games experience is really cool. So there's lots of interacting with other kids from other sports and getting to meet people from all over Canada. And really, you get treated kind of like you're a special person here. So it's really neat to be a part of. And the kids have had a smile on their face from the beginning till now. I mean, it's been fantastic.
9 athletes medal. That's tremendous. By the way, the Canada Winter Games in PEI will wrap up on Sunday. Robin McKeever is the head coach of Canada's cross-country ski team. He's also the former coach of Canada's Paranordic team. McKeever says getting out and exercising this time of year is very important, not just for athletes, but for everyone. He says there's such a mental health boost when you're physically active.
Mental health and sport is, they go hand in hand. And in order to perform at the elite level, I think a lot of top athletes are in some ways unbalanced. So we have to catch the right race at the right time at the highest point of unbalanced state. So this also leads to where mental health problems can come from, especially when we have a poor performance or don't perform where we're expected to be.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Robin McKeever, the head coach of Canada's cross-country ski team, coming up in the second half of our program. A Sherwood Park, Alberta man has now made the whole neighborhood a believer with his 8-foot-tall Shrek and Donkey snow sculptures that he meticulously crafted. He's also designed other well-known movie characters. Video journalist Micah Quinn chatted with Jacques Saint Laurent about his spectacular creations and how long it took him to create Shrek and Donkey.
This one took about, I would say, like 80 to 90 hours.
That's the total amount of time it took Jacques Saint Laurent to complete this 8-foot-tall Shrek and Donkey snow statue. Saint Laurent and his kids used a model of the movie characters as the basis to be able to construct the massive sculpture. Saint Laurent says Shrek and Donkey are quite popular with the local kids around the neighborhood.
Just yesterday was one of the neighbors from a different crescent. They were coming down, and I was just outside. I was just doing some stuff and shoveling, and the daughter ran around the corner, and she stopped, and she's like, Mom. It's just funny to see the reaction because it's 8 feet tall. It's this massive sculpture in the yard.
In the past, Saint Laurent created a 6-foot-tall Yoda and 4-foot-tall Toothless the Dragon. He printed off a few pictures and laminated the sheets to bring with him outside during the building of Jedi Master Yoda. You might also notice the amazing details of the lightsaber. Saint Laurent explained how he was able to get the weapon to stand up so well.
I put a dowel in it. It gave it that kind of like the spine. So a nice tiny little dowel in there. And then I made the 7-foot lightsaber. Then I shaved it. And then I cut a hole out through his hands because I had his hands already pre-made. And then I was able to slide that snow piece into his palm, and then kind of a little bit of water, and then just okay, sounds good.
When Saint Laurent is getting to the end of the construction of his snow sculptures, he will put up a sun tarp to help preserve the items. And if he knows the cold weather is coming, he'll put extra snow on them to reinforce the components. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
That is one talented artist creating those wonderful snow sculptures. Well, not a lot of snow here in Lethbridge, thanks to our milder temperatures. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, it appears as though a decent weekend is shaping up as well.
It sure is, Hal. Not too much snow sculpting going on down here in Lethbridge these days, and that's mainly due to the milder temperatures that we've been having. And those temperatures should stick around into Saturday. This evening, clear skies with an overnight low of -9 with a west wind gusting to 60 kilometers per hour. Now that wind should remain tomorrow, but only gusting to 40 km with a daytime high of 3 degrees and mainly sunny skies. Now, as for the rest of the weekend, it is supposed to get a little bit colder, and I will be back later on the show to give you all those details.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Tornadoes touched down in Texas and Louisiana Thursday, knocking out power to hundreds of thousands of homes and forcing the cancellation of hundreds of flights in and out of the Dallas-Fort Worth areas.
First, we're just heading out back. You can see it coming in. It got really windy, and out of nowhere, it hit, and then the whole building started shaking. And then by the time we realized the whole, ceiling is going upstairs, you start hearing the water dripping. But it got really crazy. It almost picked up the truck out back, too, at first.
Alex Murdaugh, a lawyer in the United States accused of murdering his wife and son, spoke out at a sentencing hearing, insisting that he's innocent. Murdaugh says he would never hurt his family. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Mr. Griffin and I would have no comment. The defendant would like to address the court, though.
Mr. Murdaugh.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Paw Paw.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The disgraced ex-lawyer was found guilty of killing his 22-year-old son with a shotgun and his 52-year-old wife with a rifle on June 7th of 2021. Relatives of the victims and passengers still missing after a deadly train crash in Greece on Tuesday night lashed out at government officials and the Italian-owned private rail operator Hellenic Train. Investigators are still looking into the crash, which killed 43 people and injured more than 80 others.
Φορές καταγράψαν το όνομά μου και ακόμα δεν έχει πάρει κανείς τηλέφωνο πίσω. Προφανώς οι δικοί μου άνθρωποι είναι και 2 νεκροί αυτή τη στιγμή. Έχω χάσει τον αδελφό μου, έχω χάσει τον πατέρα μου. Δεν μπορεί να αλλάξει κάτι σε αυτό, το γνωρίζω. Σας το ανακοινώσανε, δηλαδή είναι σκληρό να μην μπορείς να πεις. Το γνωρίζω εγώ. Το θέμα είναι ότι απλά κάτι να γίνει για να μην ξαναυπάρξουν 4 θύματα. Παιδιά πληρώσανε 50 εισιτήρια θανάτου.
Government officials say it appeared to be a tragic human error which caused the 2 trains to collide. So far, the country's transport minister has resigned and the station master has been arrested. A lot of the very strong winds we experienced across much of southwestern Alberta finally died down, and not a bad weekend is shaping up. A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. It's so nice that many of our main roads in Lethbridge have been fairly clear of the snow and ice. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, the milder temperatures may be sticking around until at least, late Saturday?
Yeah, after that, we're going to see that little plunge back into the minuses after we get through Saturday, which is mainly sunny skies, a 40-kilometer-per-hour wind from the west and a high of 3 degrees. Then there we go. So Sunday, we're looking at increasing clouds, -9 for a high. Into Monday, we're looking at -5 as the high as well, mainly cloudy skies. But even with those temperatures, we're still kind of sticking in that seasonal range, so it's not going to be too bad. 0 is the high on Tuesday, and then back to -6 on Wednesday, and -4 as a high on Thursday. So it does feel more like we're getting back into those seasonal temperatures. We've been a little bit spoiled here in Lethbridge, that's for sure. Average high for this time of year, 4 degrees. Average low, 19. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1986 and in 1978. We were sitting at -34 degrees. Sun rose this morning at 7:11, and our sunset this evening at 6:16. We're now sitting at 11 hours and 5 minutes of daylight. Okay, so Victoria, we're looking at a 70K wind near the water, also a 70% chance of showers, and a high of 7 degrees. There you go, 777 for Victoria. 6 degrees the high in Vancouver, also looking at a 60% chance of showers there. Edmonton looking at a high tomorrow of -5 and a chance of flurries of 30% chance. Into Calgary, -3 the high, mainly sunny skies in the morning with increasing clouds by the afternoon. Same thing for Saskatoon, sunny and then increasing clouds throughout the day, -6 the high there. -4 in Regina with mainly sunny skies and clear skies expected tomorrow in Winnipeg as well, with a high of -1 and only a 15K wind, so not too bad. Okay, Toronto is expecting a very heavy snowfall this evening. We're looking at 20 to 30 centimeters of snowfall overnight. It's a winter storm warning for them. The snow should be tapering off by the morning, though. 3 degrees the high, 0 the high in Ottawa. Expecting lots of snow tomorrow as well. Looking at 5 to 10 centimeters and then 10 to 15 centimeters of snow in Montreal tomorrow. So very snowy across the central part of the country tomorrow. Not so much on the East Coast, though. Their snowstorms are pretty much behind them now. -1 the high in Fredericton, -2 in Halifax, -4 in Charlottetown under sunny skies, and -6 the high tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland with up to 60K winds near the coast there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
Economists say the Bank of Canada will sit tight and not make any changes to its key interest rate on Wednesday. That would be the first time since last March. The rate currently stands at 4.5%. They say the central bank is likely happy about recent economic data, which shows the economy slowing and inflation easing. It currently sits at just under 6%. A company in British Columbia has been given the go-ahead to process and sell cocaine. Adastra Holdings in Langley, BC received the approval by Health Canada last month. The company owned by Michael Forbes already received its Controlled Drug and Substances Dealer's license in August of last year. Company officials said the move was made to help with harm reduction, addressing the province's overdose crisis. With the amended license, Adastra can legally sell up to 250 grams of cocaine and be able to import coca leaves, which are used to manufacture and synthesize the drug. Unionized workers at Ontario's public broadcaster have moved a step closer to striking. Dozens of TVO's journalists, producers, and education workers have voted in favor of a strike if ongoing labor talks stall. The Canadian Media Guild says members have received below-inflation wage increases for the past decade, including 3 years of complete wage freezes. The union says a letter earlier this year from the province outlined priorities for TVO, but was scant on references to journalism. The broadcaster denies it has reduced its commitment to journalism. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 244 points on the day to finish at 20,581. The Dow was up 387 points to 33,390. The S&P 500 was up 64 on the day to 4,045, and the Nasdaq was up 226 to 11,689. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.52 to $79.68 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 24 cents to $3.01 US. Gold was up $20.61 to $18.5648 US an ounce, and silver was up 36 cents to $21.26 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.75 per bushel, barley's at $9.08, canola's at $18.75, and corn is at $10.80 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was up $1.33 to $164.43. Feeder cattle March contract was up $1.43 to $190, and lean hogs April contract was up 70 cents to $84.55. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.54 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a date for a bail hearing has been set for the Lethbridge mom accused in the sexual assault case of her infant. The mother, who cannot be named under a publication ban, will have her bail hearing on March 14th at Lethbridge Provincial Court. She did not make an appearance in court Friday morning as it was waived by her defense team. It's alleged that a baby girl had been assaulted multiple times by her parents. The mother has been charged with failing to provide the necessaries of life. She'll remain in custody at the Lethbridge Correctional Centre until her hearing. Being active physically can give you a huge boost mentally. That's according to the head coach of Canada's cross-country ski team, Robin McKeever. He'll share details with us momentarily. Listen, if you've seen news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Come for an afternoon of fun to the Helen Schuler Nature Center Spring Nature Fest on Friday, March 17th, beginning at 1 p.m. This free event offers a mix of indoor and outdoor activities, including scavenger hunts, building challenges, and much more. There's something for everyone to enjoy and provides a great opportunity to discover all that spring has to offer right here in the heart of Lethbridge. To find out more, visit the Helen Schuler Nature Center's Facebook page. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a non-profit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. To book an appointment, call 403-380-6338. And for more information, visit lethbridgelegalguidance.ca. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
Mental health challenges heightened by the COVID-19 pandemic are being felt across the country. Amid this, the Coaching Association of Canada is launching a national mental health and sport project. It is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, and it aims to support the mental health of those most impacted by COVID-19 through a host of free, broadly accessible new mental health resources. Joining me to discuss the unique challenges athletes and coaches face when it comes to their mental health is Robin McKeever. He is the head coach of Canada's cross-country ski team and a 12-year coach of Canada's decorated para-Nordic team. Robin, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me.
So the COVID-19 pandemic obviously impacted a lot of people's way of living. Tell me, how did it affect your sport?
Well, for sure, it impacted everybody's way of living. And sport is, just another bystander of all of that. But in some ways, our sport was maybe blessed by it as well, because we're an outdoor sport and getting outdoors was something that everybody could do, especially in Canada. There were some places that were completely locked down, but that was what people were leaning towards for mental health. But as far as like organizing high performance sport, and trying to get to the Beijing Paralympics, as we were trying to do, the challenges were immense. And I always felt like I was canceling more than I was planning. And every time you planned one step, something got canceled. And then we're trying to just scramble to, basically do our job, which is to get athletes to a state where they can perform at their absolute best.
So what are some of the challenges that athletes and coaches face when it comes to their mental health?
Well, I think it was more around just the anxiety of what could or couldn't happen. They were always in a state of flux, not knowing, how we would go through this pandemic with that. Already the Olympics or Paralympics is such a massive pressure cooker of, trying to compete at your very best, that having this underlying space on top, that with it being in Beijing in 2022, which, politically we have some real issues between, Beijing and Canada with all in the politics these days. So those heightened pieces all add on to where athletes were afraid of potentially going into Beijing and being stuck with COVID, and the rumors of being in a hospital for like 3 weeks and not being allowed to leave because of this were immense.
Wow, and uncertainty can cause like anxiety for like many people, and of course like when the stakes are high, like that just is amplified. So I can't imagine what they must have been feeling at that time. Now, according to the Coaching Association of Canada, we are currently in a state of emergency for child and youth mental health. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't think I can't agree more. I believe that it is all out there. I believe that it is a bit of societal pressures on Canadians overall as well, though. We're constantly trying to fix everything and everybody matters, and it's really, really important. And of course, but that always has been the case. So bringing it front and center and making it a really big piece is really, really difficult. But yeah, and at the same time, though, it's so critical, yet I don't know why it's all of a sudden just become front and center. It's always been there.
Now, you have some unique perspectives and lived experience connected to mental health in sport. Do you mind sharing some of that with our viewers?
For sure. Mental health in sport is, they go hand in hand. And in order to perform at the elite level, I think a lot of top athletes are in some ways unbalanced. So we have to catch the right race at the right time at the highest point of unbalanced state. So this also leads to where mental health problems can come from, especially when we have a poor performance or don't perform where we're expected to be. And so these are all extremely important and fine details that we have to have counseling and mental health support around at major Olympics and major games, and having a close relationship with the right people in those areas. So we traveled with a mental performance coach with the para team at all times. We were, blessed in having enough funding to have that support system around us. And we created a good bond for actually over 8 years of working with that same performance coach through Pyeongchang 2018 and Beijing in 2022. So consistency is also very key to all of that.
Wow. Now, there's lots of things people can do to aid their mental health. Some will some will do painting. Others will write or just listen to music. Tell us, how can competing in sports help one's mental health?
Well, for us as a team, for me as an individual sport of para-Nordic skiing or cross-country skiing now, my whole focus is actually creating the team family environment at those major events that everybody feels that they're part of something, and that they have their whole family there, their immediate family of, team members to rely and support from. And then we did things like team building exercises with our mental performance coach, such as, breathing techniques, cold weather techniques, a lot of these little things to build trust amongst our team and competitors and staff.
Now let's talk about coaches for a bit. Do they find their role to be taxing on their mental health, or is it therapeutic for them as well?
Yeah, I think overall it's both of those things, but emotionally taxing on mental health. There's highs and lows like we've talked about all the time. And the biggest way for me personally to work on mental health is to get that close-knit feeling of the team around me, the athletes and support network, and know that they are happy with the program. And for me, if I can create happy athletes and a happy staff environment to work in, that helps me feel better about myself and then better about what we're trying to achieve.
And how can coaches be better equipped to promote, prevent, or intervene in a participant's mental health when necessary?
Well, for me, that comes down to making sure that we have close ties with the mental performance coach or, team psychologists that we can rely on. But it's also about building strong relationships with the athletes through good communication and a strong foundation to build off of if these problems arise. And inevitably, in every situation, there will always be these pieces that could come up, and tackling them head on early on becomes a big key as well to preventing a really big downward spiral.
And continuing talking about coaches, how can they be better equipped to promote, prevent, or intervene in a participant's mental health when necessary?
Well, having the good team environment around you, I think it's really important to see these things coming and go, early on. And if we can, there's a really good program with game plan for athletes. There's good financial support and aid to start some therapy. And these are at least some avenues that people need to be aware of. The other piece is we're starting, the Canadian Association of Coaching is starting this whole mental health resources. And we hope that this gets going and is really advantageous for coaches to learn more about proper steps to take, because it's not always obvious on the direction that we can go. And we're trying to create this big safe sport environment for athletes. And these are all the pieces that become critical to doing a better job at supporting the mental health of our athletes in our programs.
Now, switching gears now, Canada's Paranordic skiing team just came back from the 2023 Paranordic Skiing World Championships, which were held in Sweden. I hear they flew back heavier with a lot of hardware that the team won and even set some records. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, in May of this year, in sport, high performance sport at Olympic level, Paralympic level, works on 4-year cycles. And after 12 years of being the head coach of that program, I retired and moved to New Challenges, which was the Olympic Stream program, but helped set in place a really strong team environment that we worked with, our high performance director, our wax tech staff, and all the athletes. And it paved the way for my brother Brian to take over that program as a technical coach. But with the strength of the athletes and that team behind it and all around it supporting it, they actually did better without me. And that was maybe a big factor in those records that came from this year. So I think that's a product of the environment, strength of your team around you, and that promotes excellence.
And despite being heavyweights in the sport, I hear some of the Canadian athletes managed to pile up some personal bests at the event. Tell us what you've heard.
Well, Natalie Wilkie has always been a strong contender, and she started with that program at 16 years old in 2018. And so I believe that she's just coming into her own now. And so really strong at only, still in her early 20s, still has at least 2 more Paralympics to go. So I think as long as she stays happy and healthy within the sport, she will produce more medals for Canada in both 2026 and 2030.
And talking about you again, you retired from competing in the sport in 2010. Do you ever wish you were back out on the frozen trails to compete again?
There is the odd time, and then I try to chase some athletes around and go hard, and that lasts about 2 minutes because they are in such great shape and it is really hard work. And so I'm just happy to be a really good support network for them and try to get them as fast as possible.
Robin McKeever is the head coach of Canada's cross-country ski team and a 12-year coach of Canada's decorated Paranordic team. Robin, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Naveen.
The University of Lethbridge has been a fixture in southern Alberta since it began in 1967, and since then, thousands of students have passed through its doors to go on to use their education to impact the lives of people in our province, our country, and beyond the borders. To talk more about the changes at the university and the impacts its students are making across the world is Dr. Leroy Littlebear. Now, Dr. Littlebear has been the Vice Provost of Iniskim Indigenous Relations since 2022 and was the first Indigenous person to be quoted by the Supreme Court of Canada. His lifetime of accomplishments include some of the most important political achievements for Indigenous peoples in Canada and around the world. Very impressive. Dr. Leroy Littlebear, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So you have a long list of education and accolades. Your dedication to education, leadership, and community have led to a United Nations declaration, have changed the Constitution of Canada, and influenced the lives of thousands of students. So all of this, and you didn't even attend school for the first time until you were 10. Very, very inspiring. But is there one thing that you hold close to your heart as your greatest accomplishment?
Not really. I think it's a number of things that it's almost like once you get going and hey, things start to evolve. And so it's that evolution of these events and so on that have led up to things like being noticed, if I can put it that way, by the Supreme Court of Canada, and leading up to things like the Native American Studies Department at the University of Lethbridge, leading up to things like the Buffalo Treaty. I've got a copy of that, and the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So it's really an involvement of all these events. Yes.
That's incredible. Okay, so you have a long history with the University of Lethbridge. So are there one or two things that really stand out in your mind as the biggest and best changes at the U of L?
Yes. Well, I tell people about how Native American Studies, which is now known as Indigenous Studies, started. And I would say the turning point was when the university was still over there sharing space with the Lethbridge College. I was walking down the hallway, and the president's office, Sam Smith, had his door open. He kind of had an open door policy. And he saw me coming down the hallway. And he says, "Hey, Leroy, come on in. Let's have coffee." And I did. And he told me, "Hey, would you like to come out? I'd like to invite you. And would you like to come out for dinner at my place?" And he gave me the date, which is a couple of days later. And it was there, I thought he was just inviting me. And he, when I got there to his house, lo and behold, there was a whole bunch of faculty members there at his place and so on. And I thought to myself, he never told me that. I thought he was just inviting me. Being a student, I was always hungry. Yeah, I'll come for the food. Well, to make a long story short, he told us, we've got a large Indigenous population surrounding our university, Lethbridge, and so on. This is Blackfoot country and so on. What can we do in cooperation with this Indigenous community and so on? And I was kind of put on the spot. I said to
right in front of everybody too.
In front of everybody. Yeah. I said, "I'm just a student here. Why don't you ask them?" But it turned out that we had a summer job going out there to ask them. And that was where all the discussion around the development of an Indigenous program at the university. And you hardly hear about this back in the early 70s, see? And so the establishment of a full-fledged disciplinary department within the university, opening its door July 1st, 1975, was a big accomplishment for the university.
So that started the process where you were involved in helping establish the Native American Studies program at the U of L, which is now the Indigenous Studies program at the U of L. Yeah, that's incredible.
And we were a full-fledged disciplinary department. And hey, you never hear about that throughout the country back then. But now, especially with the impetus of the PRC, yes, you see Indigenous programs flowering, blossoming all over the place across the country. But U of L was the first one.
That's incredible. Now, when you think of younger Blackfoot generations, what is your hope for their future?
Well, my hope for their future is to come to institutions of higher learning, whether it be University of Lethbridge or elsewhere, but to make it comfortable for them, make it kind of like luxury for them to come to an institution, have the luxury to go to play around with ideas, concepts, and so on, so that, hey, when they leave the institution as graduates, hey, they'll become good contributing citizens. They'll become good, contributing members of their communities, and that's my hope for all the students that have come through. And so far, those students that have come through, that Indigenous students, hey, they're all employed.
That's incredible. Now, Dr. Little Bear, how do you see the work that you've done and the leadership that you've had as bridging the gap between cultures, not just at the university, but also on a national level?
Well, I see this as being given the opportunity. In other words, it wasn't just me. Well, there were leaders, for instance, Sam Smith that I referred to, and other presidents throughout the university that have given me and others the opportunity to come out and perform, so to speak, and play out this development, give ideas and so on. Hey, we've got an idea. Do you think this is something worthwhile we can do? And yes, they've jumped on, and Indigenous studies and all the happenings now on campus are blossoming and so on. But it's being given the opportunity.
Yeah, that's true. So I would imagine you were given opportunity, and then in turn you want to give opportunity to the younger generation. I know, was it Isaac Newton that coined the phrase "standing on the shoulders of giants"? So there might have been some giants that positioned you to have the view of the future, your future possibilities for your life. So can you talk about the individuals that provided you with an ability to see what your future could be like? I bet you could have never imagined back when you were a youngster.
Yes. Well, when I was young, and let's say I was living on a reserve, I grew up there. I went to school there, residential school. But I did have my older relatives, elders that gave us guidance. My uncle Bernard, for instance, I spent many times, many days with him. And one of the things in his advice was, he said, I don't have any education. All the work that I do is sweat at the brow, breaking your back, hard labor type of work. Okay. I want you to go to school so that, the way he put it was, you'll get paid for your thoughts.
I like that.
And yeah, but his caveat was, don't forget your people. That's the way he put it. And I've always operated by that advice.
Mm-hmm. How important was mentorship for you?
Oh, very, very important because in our indigenous ways and our indigenous culture, our approach to education is out on the land. It's by actual experiential approaches. See? And so an example was, hey, we're out there cutting hay with the old style mowers and so on, even with a team of horses. Well, I was accompanying him, and one day he told me, okay, you've seen me do all this. It's now your turn. So it was through all the actual experience and so on. But then a large part of it also was the being able to speak my own language fluently. And so kind of like the thought processes that are brought about by the language. And that consequently, that rubbed off on me. And today, I really push for the notion of language. I really push for and try to educate people about thinking processes, metaphysics, paradigms and so on, because those are the foundational basis of thought processes.
Absolutely. What does mentorship in 2023 look like now compared to back when you were younger and receiving the mentorship?
Well, the view today, and especially of young people, it seems like there's to some extent, we had a large number of our older people, but they're seeing that those older people, those elders, are passing. And so there's now kind of an urgency on their part, that is the youth, to have elders with them. Because in the future, we, the young, are also going to be the elders. So we better try and learn as much as we can of our culture, our language, in addition to the education that we're getting at these institutions of higher learning. Because in the not too distant future, we'll be being referred to as elders. So the youth are taking it serious because they're seeing these elders passing away, and there's fewer and fewer of them.
Right. I want to switch gears for a minute here and just to talk about the successes of the university here in Lethbridge. So it's been rated as a top 6 university in the world. So who or what do you think can be credited for this high rating?
Well, my response to that is that the university has its foundational base as liberal education. Liberal education gives you a broad base to draw from.
Sure.
Okay. As opposed to, specialization. Say. So specialization is great if you want to know something really in depth. But generally speaking, what happens then is when you specialize too much, you might know everything within your specialty, but not much outside of the specialty. See, but a liberal education gives you a broad overview, which means you can come up with creative new ideas, drawing on different parts of different foundational bases. And so it's that, let me put it this way, that's what brings about leadership, good leaders. See, Yeah. And I think that's what really is important about how University of Lethbridge brings about knowledge and education to its students.
Very interesting. Dr. Littlebear, looks like we are out of time here, but thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. That was Dr. Leroy Littlebear, Vice Provost of Inniskim Indigenous Relations at the University of Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.